Hey everybody, Josh Sigurdson, World Alternative Media here, and of course we're joined by author and economic analyst here at WAM, John Sneisen. And let me start this report off by saying taxation is theft. As a matter of fact, it's legalized extortion, and it can't go on much longer, especially under the Canadian government, which is just taxing people to death. And it's just interesting the hypocrites that we find in government, which is probably the best place to find hypocrites and power freaks and criminals anyway. So, as the story goes, Trudeau's chief fundraiser is linked to Cayman Island's tax scheme. And obviously, this is no surprise to most of us, but apparently goes into a 24-year paper trail showing that the Trudeau government's one of their fundraisers, one of their biggest fundraisers going back the last 24 years, is all tied up in a Cayman Island tax scheme. The CRA has pledged to investigate and take appropriate action. CRA is, of course, the Canadian,
the Crown Revenue Agency.
Yeah, it's not even government. It's just.
Well, you got it, the Crown, right? The Crown Revenue.
It's their basic theft, cartel that comes around and steals money from people. But anyway, it's just annoying that Canadians are being so heavily taxed from income tax to business taxes, property taxes, PST, GSTs. MSTs in many places, the carbon tax, which is a tax on basically everything, the hidden tax of inflation, just the list goes on and on, John. And on top of that, Trudeau, who claimed that, small businesses were just ways for people to hide their money from the government, their hard-earned money, turns out that, of course, as we mentioned several years ago here at WAM, Trudeau was found actually having a bunch of shell corporations himself. This government is hypocritical, like most governments, and on top of that, they are extorting us with no mind to the fact that they are doing that which they claim they're using this powerhouse against us for, and it's absolutely ridiculous. But John, can you go into what you've got?
Well, what the thing behind this is, it's of course we did a huge report where me and Josh basically broke to the world that the Panama Papers was a false flag, and it was the start of, actually that came out later, that a couple of months later, it was the base erosion and profit shifting.
Yeah, well, just going into that quickly, John, the ICIJ, all the companies and organizations involved in the Panama Papers leak was linked directly to the Open Society Foundation, which went through the papers, and it was an attempt to basically throw people under the bus for daring to try and hide their hard-earned money from the all-powerful state, and at the same time try to create an international taxation ring by the use of the United Nations coming down and extorting everyone themselves.
Yeah, well, actually what happened, so I'll read from my book here, Canada, the Greatest Economy in the World, which is
up on Amazon.
Of course, with Trudeau, it's a massive question mark right now. A report to the G20 Development Working Group by the IMF, OECD, the UN, and the World Bank. So that was the initial start of this. It was, the start of this one world taxation movement. Now, of course, what happened after that was that they implemented their Hegelian dialectic, where the problem was tax evasion, right? And then the reaction was, of course, the G20 working group, and then the solution was the plan, which is the base erosion and profit shifting, it's called, and they talk about how they're gonna come after multilateral corporations all over the world through this, and they have currently 65 signatories. Now, Canada signed on to this on the 11th of May 2016. So they had this ready as they pushed out the Panama Papers. Almost, it just came a couple of months after we saw the initial paper. We didn't actually see the base erosion and profit shifting when we made the claim. It actually come out later.
Yeah, well, we basically predicted what would happen, and to no surprise to us, it happened. I mean, right as it came out, it's like, well, this is an obvious false flag in order to create an international tax agenda, and that's exactly what happened. And with people like Stephen Bronfman, who of course is the fundraiser that we were talking about, who's also a philanthropist, etc. It's just funny when you look at quotes by people like Justin Trudeau, where he says things like, our government has long known, indeed we got elected on a promise to make sure that people were paying their fair share of taxes. Who dictates fair? I don't know. And then, of course, with the ethics commissioner, we have the issues with Bill Morneau, a man that we confronted, the finance minister, just an absolute moron of epic proportions.
Well, let me talk about ethics and everything, and how about paying your taxes. When it comes to this whole one world taxation that they're trying to implement, and then the Paradise Papers is just another, problem that they created. This reaction is the BEPS. They just wait and see. They're going to just start talking about this base erosion and profit shifting that the United Nations and all its underlying associations have put forward. Now, when it comes to the United Nations, most people there are actually tax exempt. Their incomes, so it just shows you what a double standard they have.
It's a socialist
right?
power.
Yeah, it's an oligarchy.
Food chain. It's basically the leaders living in palaces while their dirty peasants drink out of gutters. And we'll go into the Paradise Papers in another video more extensively, because of course this is where the leak came from, and it's important to go more in depth. So we will do that at another time. We got to work hard on it. But John?
Yeah, well, it all comes down to here that. This is all a push, to try to expose people, and they had, Nike. They were talking about how Nike is avoiding, creating all these shell corporations. Well, in the first place, the reason why, corporations and other people are doing these things is because they don't want to pay taxes, because taxation is theft. And I think innately, in a lot of these people, no matter how, political, whatever they are, they don't like paying taxes. They don't like having all this money stolen from them, from the government, that are, doing terrible things with it, killing people. They're, of course, building crappy roads, whatever.
Everything they do is inefficient. Look, everything the government does, the free market can do better. And this is why the issue with taxes is such a big one, because when these corporations are taxed to death, there's no competition or innovation in the markets. They can't pay employees as much. They can't produce as much. And it just creates a domino effect. Outside of that government manipulated, regulated tax system, you have people voting with their dollar, a real form of democracy that isn't a collective extorting the rest of the collective. It's individuals deciding for themselves what they want at the store, at the grocery store, what products they want, what companies they want to support. If a company does something stupid or terrible to their employees, people won't go there because they'll lose demand and they'll go somewhere else. And there's so many other competitors always competing for a lower price. And then workers get paid more and businesses get bigger based on individual support.
Yeah, the problem here is, of course, the big, massive, tax law. It started on one sheet of paper initially, right? And then it just ended up into now it's thousands upon thousands of pages of tax law, which is ridiculous. The lawyers created massive amounts of money for themselves, writing all these laws together with the government. And then, of course, the corporations are lobbying to, implement little loopholes in there. So they have, their tax shelters so they could hide money. But the problem is who's getting caught in the crosshairs? The middle class and everybody else, the small business owners that don't have mass amounts of money to lobby to create those loopholes in the first place.
Absolutely. This is all created in order to bring us, the individuals, down as the government continues to prop itself up and manipulate us into debt servitude, which we talked about so many times. So as the markets are bubbling up and ready to pop, we have the monetary system crashing. And of course, it's under the guise of, doing well. And, it's just kind of bumping up and down, fluctuating, whatever. No, it's fiat, so it's bound to fail. It's built to fail. All fiat currencies eventually revert to their intrinsic value of zero, always have, always will. And it always just pushes us into debt, because if we're pushed down a bottomless pit of debt, we're forced to ask for a ladder up from the government and the banking system, and that puts us in perfect servitude to them, which is exactly where they want us.
I got one more thing to say, Josh, and it comes with you saying fiat always goes to zero. Taxation always goes to zero because the government collapses in on itself.
Absolutely. It always has, always will. And, we will continue to report on this. We just wanted to do a quick report basically on Stephen Bronfman, who for some reason I didn't mention at the beginning of the video. I should have his name. He is a financier, etc. But Stephen Bronfman is just one of many within the Liberal government that we will find out in the coming months and years that have been involved in these things. And you know what? I don't blame him, but what I'm sick of is that these people that finance this nonsense, debt enslavement, servitude, manipulative government cartel putting their hands around our necks, choking us to death until we tap out and say, I'll do whatever you want. This is always what these people do. They always do exactly what they attack other people for daring to do, because they think government is God. They have a religion of statism. They have a national anthem, which is their hymns. They pray by standing and pledging allegiance. They bow on their knees, and they basically have created this religion of statism around us, where we have to believe whatever the government tells us. We have to listen to whatever the government says, and if we don't, we're somehow anti-Canadian. We are terroristic. We are all sorts of just horrible name calling that we hear from the state. So when it comes down to this, I really think that avoiding taxes, sure, whatever, that's fine. But if you're going to force us to pay more taxes all the time and destroy small businesses and kill off the poor while pretending to be for the poor or whatever, we have to step up and do something about this, because this is insane, and shame on every single one of those statist snakes that continue to extort us while they don't run by the same rules.
Yeah, well, government was replaced with the old kings and queens. It's of course another form of religion. That's why you're seeing, in China, they're coming after the Buddhists, the Falun Gong, and killing them because they believe in a religion, not in the government itself, in the communistic government.
Yeah, it's like the Soviet Union were atheists and they were killing off people of different religions. Maoist China was similar. Yeah, absolutely.
Oh yeah, it's always like that. And
I should mention Maoist China, communist China. Remember when Trudeau said, I really admire their basic dictatorship. Yeah, I think they do things right.
Yeah, and we'll look at now. It was just, I saw an article the other day that now they're going to be putting people in prison for not, standing or whatever they do for the national anthem. So here you go. People came after Trump for saying like, oh, you should not disrespect the anthem. But look in China, nobody's talking about China, completely putting people in prison.
Or if you criticize the national anthem in China, yeah, absolutely. Well, with that said, it's all just insanity as per usual, folks. We just got to continue calling it out and shoo the snakes out of the den, and hopefully someday in the near future we can finally shut these globalist, power-free collectivists out. We can stomp out this constant flame that they are spreading. It's a wildfire, and it's just containing everything, and people willingly bow down, attached to the chains they so much revere, rather than loosen those chains, break free, and actually think for themselves as individuals, rather than a giant collective that thinks they have the right to extort everyone else because they think their idea is better than theirs. Good ideas don't require force, and individuals should be able to make money, hard-earned money, and not get it stolen from them to fund this horrible collectivist monstrosity of an operation.
Yeah, government always grows until there's no return where they pass over, over 50, we've talked about this before, 50% of the GDP of the whole country, and then it collapses. Like, look at Greece, look at Spain, Portugal, look at Ireland, look at now the Scandinavian countries are about to collapse. So like all this is that the government will never stop growing. It'll grow to a point where there's no money left to extort, and then it collapses.
Yeah, they already sold off all that gold in Canada. Anyway, so we'll continue to report on this. We will do something more about the Paradise Papers. But until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson and John Sneisen signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change. Thanks for watching, everyone. Check the links below. GoFundMe, Patreon. We can't do it without you. Any donation is very much appreciated, especially as we are so vastly demonetized by the Anti-Defamation League on YouTube, as they flag all of our content as hate speech. You can also find our Bitcoin address in the description and the comments, as well as on the screen for you to scan if you please. You can also find me at Josh Sigurdson at steemit.com. That's steemit.com, the future of social media, as the dinosaur social media digs its own grave. You get paid in cryptocurrency, Steem that is, on steemit.com via the upvote of your posts, so I hope to see you there. But until next time, this is Josh Sigurdson signing out from World Alternative Media. Find the truth, be the change. you.